Okay, so this is like my third time trying to film this video, and I've done it so many times, and I like wrote the script like months ago. I was finishing it up like end of October, and it's coming up on 2021. So this video has been a long time in the making. I've thought about making it since like September, so here we are. Without further ado, let's get into it. I wouldn't call Dirty Work my favorite all-time low album. And I wouldn't call it the best all-time low album, not by any stretch of the imagination. Those titles go to Nothing Personal and Last Young Renegade, respectively. So why did I choose to make this video about Dirty Work, as opposed to albums I find better or more worthy of my favoritism? Well, I find the making and release of Dirty Work endlessly fascinating. So many things went into the look, the sound, what made it such a brief album cycle, and why, until this year, it's been barely mentioned by fans or the band. I'm Taylor Squared, and this is my endless fascination with All-Time Low's Dirty Work. So if you're one of my friends who has no idea what I'm talking about, I'll bring you up to speed. All-Time Low is a pop-punk/alternative rock band from Baltimore, Maryland, formed by high school friends, consisting of frontman Alex Gaskarth, guitarist Jack Barakat, bassist Zach Merrick, and drummer Ryan Dawson. They rose to success with their second album, So Wrong It's Right, featuring the one song by them you heard before I became obsessed, Dear Maria, Count Me In. Coming off the success of their third album, Nothing Personal, All-Time Low signed to Interscope Records, a label that held artists such as Blink-182, Lady Gaga, Eminem, and Maroon 5. This was major label shit. And let me tell you, it was not a good time for major labels. They started recording for Dirty Work in 2010, originally set for release sometime that year. It was delayed to early 2011, then was delayed repeatedly until its final release date on June 6, 2011. I Feel Like Dancing was the first single to be released in April of 2011. So here's the thing about I Feel Like Dancing. A lot of people didn't get it. A lot of people didn't get the video, which, yeah, it makes sense. I Feel Like Dancing is a weird fucking song. It has a weird fucking video. I didn't get it at first. But you know what made me get it? Weezer. Weezer and All-Time Low are very different bands from different eras with different fan bases. Their key similarity is what I like to call the pop-punk attitude, where they don't take themselves very seriously. The other side of that is how seriously they take their music, and that is where the key difference is. Weezer has always written satire songs, to an extent, and All-Time Low has always taken their music very seriously. Now, how does this connect to I Feel Like Dancing? Well, Rivers Cuomo, frontman and primary songwriter for Weezer, co-wrote I Feel Like Dancing with Alex Gaskarth. After a few listens, if you know what Weezer sounds like, you can kind of tell. The lead guitar lines and verse chord progression are very Weezer sounding, and it just has that sort of vibe. But the thing that turned a lot of All-Time Low fans off of the song were the lyrics, which are very Weezer style, and are definitely satire. It's a satire song. The lyrics are intentionally bad. I don't know why you didn't get this. I don't know. What level were you on? Maybe it was how the label pushed it, which I'm gonna touch on later. But the sarcastic tone and relatively unsympathetic character poking fun at something common, in this case party culture, that's all Weezer. Listening to verses of I Feel Like Dancing only feels slightly better than listening to the lyrics of El Scorcho or no one else, and that's only because there's less misogyny. And you know, I won't blame you if you don't like I Feel Like Dancing. Weezer and their style is definitely an acquired taste, especially if you're used to bands like All-Time Low. But personally, in my white male opinion, I think it kind of slaps, and maybe you should give it another listen. Okay, tangent over. So All-Time Low made Dirty Work while signed to Interscope Records in 2010. This was a time of general downsizing for major labels, so as a smaller artist, they weren't treated with as much priority. And they've said that no one they knew was working at the label by the time they left. Plus, the release of the album itself was handled very poorly, not being released until several months after they had already started touring on it, with the tour starting in March of 2011 and the album not being released until June of that year. Hell, they didn't even put out the first single until April 25th, and it was not marketed in the way it should have been. This historic mismanagement appears to have been pretty common at the label around this time, with them getting criticism from Blink-182, MIA, and 50 Cent for the same thing. Overall, they were not doing so great with managing their artists at the time. But do you want to know what else they were doing? Interscope Records in Los Angeles were receiving pickups and deliveries of hundreds of kilograms of cocaine in 2010 and 2011, as well as Rocket Cargo, a shipping company with a lot of musical clients, was allegedly shipping drugs to Interscope Studios in New York City. So with this as the backdrop, I'm sure it was not pleasant to be at the label. Oh my god. Wow. I'm a musician and a songwriter, so I can't help but analyzing this album from a musical standpoint. And I consider my opinions on this much more valid than my opinions in the previous part because I have training. I will be using the North American Digital Extended Edition track list because that's the one I listen to. The bonus tracks are Get Down on Your Knees and Tell Me You Love Me, My Only One, Merry Christmas Kiss My Ass, and Bad Enough for You. I like to divide Dirty Work songs into 4 categories for analysis. Category 1, classic all-time low. This category consists of Do You Want Me Dead, Forget About It, Time Bomb, and Heroes. They all slap so hard, but aren't particularly notable in any way. Songs in this category are all-time lows bread and butter. Classic late 2000s pop punk, big choruses, heavy drums and guitars. I love all of these, but they aren't particularly important or notable in the grand scheme of all-time low. Category 2. All-time low are actually really good musicians, and we forget that sometimes. This category consists of Guts, Return the Favor, Under a Paper Moon, and Get Down on Your Knees and Tell Me You Love Me. I could write entire essays about each of these songs individually, but in general, they're pushing the boundaries of what all-time low is, and often show their progression as a band. They'll have odd time signatures, or complicated guitar lines and techniques, or interesting instrumentation and structure, or show off Alex Gaskarth's lyrical prowess. These songs also sound more like future albums where they appear to expand on musical ideas in these songs. To an extent, I would have A Daydream Away and My Only One in here, since they do skip over that in Don't Panic, but touch on them again in Future Hearts. Category 3. This isn't really a category, but I don't know where else to put things. This category consists of I Feel Like Dancing and Merry Christmas Kiss My Ass. These songs just don't fit, and since I already touched on I Feel Like Dancing and don't think Merry Christmas Kiss My Ass is that important to analyze, they're both going here. Category 4. Songs that would absolutely at least sound different if they weren't with Interscope. This category consists of No Idea, That Girl, and Bad Enough for You, primarily. To an extent, I would consider A Daydream Away and My Only One part of this category, but they did expand on those ideas in Future Hearts as mentioned previously, and Alex is really into them. Generally, these songs sound very different from All Time Low, especially lyric-wise. It doesn't really sound like Alex Gaskarth writing as himself or even as a character, especially in That Girl and Bad Enough for You. But only one of these songs was written with co-writes they hadn't worked with before. Both That Girl and Bad Enough for You were written with Matt Squire, who worked with them on a significant portion of Nothing Personal. And the songs that sound the most pop weren't pushed as singles as the label pushed I Feel Like Dancing, Forget About It, Time Bomb, and Guts. As much as none of it lines up, I still think that these songs would sound different if they weren't with Interscope, as they don't sound as essentially all-time low as the other songs on this album. The main place where All Time Low talks about the making of Dirty Work in retrospect is on Straight to DVD 2. Ryan calls the recording process, quote, bumpy and a little weird and different because of the major label backing and money. Alex mentioned that when they jumped in, it was a bad time for major labels. People were leaving, and Zach said, quote, as a band, you're like, uh-oh, this isn't going as we planned. Mike Green says they were being pushed into doing things that didn't feel right for them. I assume that All Time Low is on contracts or something. Ryan mentioned that people were predicting the end of All Time Low in interviews and articles, though in reading articles from the time, they're still up. I couldn't find one saying anything like that. That doesn't mean that they weren't. Maybe it just didn't end up in the thing. Now, 2020 has done a lot to expose the band's honest feelings about Dirty Work. Previously, Ryan had been the only one to say that Dirty Work was the album they wanted to write, but each member had at least one song from the album on their choice setlist. Alex has shown a particular affinity for the album, putting 3 songs on his choice set. That's not the most biased shown in the set list. Ryan actually had 5 Future Hearts songs on his, So maybe the drums are just really good on Future Hearts. In the after-show interview of Alex's set, which was the only one I went to, I had to pick one, they discussed Dirty Work, and he mentioned that the album got a bad rep, but he did really like the songs, and the other members seemed to agree. Despite the band's perception that the reception of the album was quite negative, the 8 remaining reviews on Metacritic are quite mixed, the critic ones at least. The public felt much more strongly about it. The most negative review came from Sputnik Music, saying, "Dirty Work is essentially a manufacturer's dummy. Airbrushed, soulless, custom-built to exacting specifications, aesthetically pleasing but ultimately empty and devoid of any real distinctive character. At the risk of butchering a metaphor, all-time low or newfound glory with grotesque, misaligned implants." Reading that, I can't believe they gave it a 40. That is very generous for such a scathing review. And, I can see it in some ways. I did mention that some songs feel devoid of all-time low spark, but that's not the vast majority of songs, to me. And they've mentioned that these are the songs that they wanted to write. Fan reception leans negative review-wise, but in my personal experience, no one has been strongly against it, and it was their most profitable album worldwide, with particular success in Australia, Canada, and the UK. So clearly, it wasn't their worst in that regard. A blog like War on Tumblr posted after Alex's set, quote, "2020 really was the Dirty Work redemption arc, wasn't it? And I couldn't have put it better myself. The band has clearly embraced it once more, and it appears fans have as well, just in time for the 10-year anniversary." There will always be a special place in my heart for Dirty Work, and I think that overall it's a good album. The best songs, I feel, are the ones that push the boundaries of what All Time Low is, but are still them, and that's how I feel about most albums. Specifically, I think my favorite songs are probably Return the Favor, I Feel Like Dancing, and Under a Paper Moon, but each song is good in its own right, and I even have a special love for That Girl and Bad Enough for You. Again, my opinion might be clouded by my long-term fascination, but it is a factor. Overall, Dirty Work is a fun and fascinating album, and overall a good lesson. Would highly recommend. So we've come to the outro. It's a different day. I just finished editing, and I would just like to say that I think that you should go listen to my music. You can do that on Spotify and Apple Music and SoundCloud, and here on YouTube. All links will be into the description. The playlist link might be in the card, but don't trust me to do that. I'm exhausted. You could follow me on Instagram at Taylor Squared Music, or on Tumblr, I guess. That's where I'm active. At Taylor is Emo Trash. If you want to hear my shitty band hot takes, or want me to cite your Tumblr post in my next video. Anyway, have a nice day. Love y'all.